The carburetor in my hands was as busted as my marriage, but at least I knew how to fix one of them. Grease under my fingernails, sweat dripping onto the concrete floor of my garage, I was elbow deep in honest work when I heard my wife Jenna's voice drifting through the thin walls of our house. "Oh God, yes, I can't wait to feel you inside me again." If I wanted to hear moaning in my own house, I would have bought a haunted vacuum cleaner. But this wasn't supernatural. This was just my wife of 15 years having phone sex with someone who definitely wasn't me. The wrench in my hand suddenly felt heavier, like it was made of lead instead of steel. My name is Eddie Morrison, and I'm 39 years old. I manage the parts department at Riverside Auto Supply in Harlow, Massachusetts, a faded mill town where dreams go to die and gossip spreads faster than black ice in January. I've got calloused hands, a receding hairline, and a beer gut that arrived right on schedule for my 40th birthday next month. I'm exactly the kind of guy women like my wife eventually get bored with. Jenna, on the other hand, has transformed herself into something else entirely over the past 2 years. Gone is the soft-spoken woman who used to make me coffee every morning and laugh at my stupid jokes. In her place stands a 36-year-old fitness influencer with abs you could grate cheese on and an Instagram following that makes her feel like a celebrity in our little town. She teaches yoga and Pilates at Elite Fitness, the newest gym in Harlow's revitalized downtown district. The place is all glass and chrome, nothing like the dusty auto shop where I spend my days surrounded by spark plugs and transmission fluid. Her world smells like lavender and ambition. Mine smells like motor oil and resignation. I need you so bad, Matt. Eddie's working late again. He never pays attention to me anymore. Matt. Of course, it was Matt Brennan, the 29-year-old personal trainer with the perfect smile and the kind of body that makes middle-aged women forget they have husbands. I'd met him exactly once at the gym's grand opening 6 months ago. He'd given me one of those limp handshakes that screams, "I could bench press you," while looking over my shoulder for someone more interesting to talk to. The phone conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I set down the carburetor and wiped my hands on an old rag, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to my face? How many late yoga classes and girls' nights out were actually rendezvous with pretty boy Matt? I walked back into the house through the kitchen door, making enough noise to announce my presence. The conversation upstairs stopped immediately, followed by Jenna's voice calling down sweetly, "Hi, honey, how's the car coming along?" "Just fine," I called back, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a beer. "Carburetor's shot, but I should have it running by tomorrow." "That's great. I'm just finishing up some work stuff up here. Be down in a minute." Work stuff. Right. If phone sex was work, then my wife was employee of the month. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. I didn't install hidden cameras or hire a private investigator. I just started paying attention, really paying attention, to the way Jenna's face lit up when her phone buzzed, to how she suddenly needed to shower immediately after coming home from the gym, to the new lingerie that appeared in her dresser drawer, tags still attached, that she never wore for me. The breakthrough came on a Thursday morning. Jenna was rushing around the bedroom, getting ready for what she claimed was an early Pilates class. In her hurry, she knocked her gym bag off the bed, spilling its contents across the hardwood floor. "Shit," she muttered, scrambling to collect everything. I was pretending to be asleep, watching through barely open eyes as she stuffed items back into the bag. But I saw what tumbled out, and my blood ran cold. Adult toys, expensive ones, a bottle of high-end personal lubricant, massage oils, things we'd never used together, things she'd never even hinted at wanting to try with me. After she left, I got up and checked the bag more thoroughly. Everything was there, hidden in a side compartment I'd never noticed before. The toys were clearly well used, the lubricant nearly empty. My wife was having the kind of adventurous sex life I'd only dreamed about, just not with me. That's when the plan began forming in my mind. Not a plan for confrontation or divorce lawyers or marriage counseling. A plan for something much more satisfying. I drove to Morrison's hardware store, no relation despite the name, and found my best friend Mitch behind the counter as usual. Mitch Kowalski had owned the place for 12 years, ever since his father retired. He was one of the few people in town who still treated me like I mattered. "Eddie, what brings you by? Need something for that carburetor?" "Actually, I need some super glue, the industrial strength stuff." Mitch raised an eyebrow. "Planning to glue something important back together?" "Something like that," I said, counting out exact change. "Something that's been falling apart for a while now." That night, while Jenna was at her book club, which I now knew was code for bouncing on Matt's personal training equipment, I carefully removed each item from her secret stash. The toys, the lubricant, the massage oils. Using a small brush, I applied industrial-strength adhesive to every surface, every opening, every moving part. Then I glued them all together. Not just stuck together, permanently, chemically bonded into one massive, unusable sculpture of my wife's infidelity. The lubricant bottle fused to the largest toy. The smaller items attached at artistic angles. The massage oil integrated into the design like some perverted modern art installation. It was beautiful in its own twisted way. I put everything back in the bag exactly as I'd found it, zipped it up, and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that makes you believe in new beginnings. I was up early, making coffee and scrambling eggs like it was any other day. Jenna stumbled downstairs in her workout clothes, grabbing her protein shake and gym bag. "Early Pilates again?" I asked innocently. "You know it. Got to keep these abs in shape." She patted her stomach and flashed me a smile that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my stomach turn. "Have a great workout, honey. Really give it everything you've got." She kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory peck, and headed for the door. "I'll probably be late tonight, too. Tanya wants to discuss expanding my class schedule." Tanya Rodriguez was the gym owner, a 45-year-old former bodybuilder who'd become Jenna's mentor and confidant. I suspected she knew all about the affair and was probably encouraging it. Birds of a feather and all that. "Take all the time you need," I said, sipping my coffee. "I'll be here." After Jenna left, I drove to work and tried to act normal. Riverside Auto Supply was busy for a Friday, with weekend warriors coming in for oil changes and brake pads. I helped customers, processed orders, and made small talk about the weather and the Patriots' chances this season, all while checking my phone every few minutes. The call came at 11:47 a.m. "Eddie Morrison, this is Bonnie Fletcher, a nurse at Harlow General Hospital. Your wife asked me to call you." My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Is everything okay? What happened?" "Well, sir, this is a bit unusual, but your wife and a gentleman friend of hers are in our emergency department. They've had what you might call an adhesive mishap." "I'm sorry, what?" "They're stuck together, Mr. Morrison. Quite thoroughly stuck, I'm afraid. We're going to need you to come down here." I paused for exactly the right amount of time, like a man processing shocking news. "Stuck together? How is that even possible?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. How quickly can you get here?" "I'm on my way." The drive to Harlow General took 12 minutes, during which I practiced my concerned husband face in the rearview mirror. I parked in the emergency lot and walked through the automatic doors, approaching the reception desk with what I hoped looked like appropriate worry. "I'm Eddie Morrison. My wife Jenna is here. Something about being stuck?" The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, tried to suppress a smile. "Room 7. Just follow the hallway." I could hear voices before I reached the room, Jenna's panicked whispers and Matt's deeper tones, both talking over each other. A doctor was explaining something about solvents and patients. I knocked gently and pushed the door open. The sight that greeted me was even better than I'd imagined. Jenna and Matt were on the examination table, covered by a hospital gown that barely contained their predicament. They were locked together in the most awkward position imaginable, connected by what appeared to be every item from Jenna's secret collection, all fused into one immovable mass. "Eddie!" Jenna's face was red with embarrassment and something that might have been fear. "Thank God you're here. There's been a terrible accident." "Accident?" I moved closer, studying the situation with the fascination of a man seeing a car wreck. "What kind of accident results in this?" Matt, who couldn't turn his head to look at me directly, spoke up. "The toys malfunctioned, some kind of chemical reaction with the lubricant. We were just exercising. Exercising?" I nodded solemnly. "Of course. Very vigorous exercise by the looks of it." Doctor. Sarah Chen, a woman about my age with tired eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd seen everything, cleared her throat. "Mr. Morrison, we're going to need to use a medical-grade solvent to separate them. It's going to take some time, and frankly, it's going to be uncomfortable for everyone involved." "How uncomfortable?" I asked. "Well, we'll need to dissolve the adhesive slowly to avoid injury. The process could take several hours, and given the intimate nature of the situation, we'll need to keep them in this position until we're finished." Jenna made a sound like a wounded animal. Matt just closed his eyes and muttered something that sounded like a prayer. Whatever you need to do, doctor, I said. I just want my wife to be safe. Nurse Bonnie, a woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair and a wicked sense of humor, stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, I have to ask, have you ever seen anything like this before? The adhesive pattern is quite artistic. I studied the tableau again, tilting my head like I was analyzing a painting. You know, it does have a certain symmetry to it. Very modern, very sticky. Eddie, please, Jenna whispered. This is serious. You're absolutely right, honey. This is very serious. I mean, what are the odds of a spontaneous chemical reaction like this? It's almost like someone planned it. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of medical equipment. Dr. Chen looked between us with growing suspicion, while Nurse Bonnie openly smirked. Mr. Morrison, the doctor said carefully, do you have any idea how this might have happened? I shrugged. I'm just an auto parts guy, Doc. I know about carburetors and brake fluid, not whatever this is. But I do know that industrial adhesives don't just activate by themselves. Usually take some kind of catalyst. Matt's eyes snapped open, staring at me with dawning realization. But he couldn't say anything without admitting what they'd been doing, and we all knew it. Well, I said, checking my watch, I should probably get back to work. Lots of people depending on me to keep their cars running. Will they be okay here for a while? Several hours at least, Dr. Chen confirmed. Perfect. Jenna, honey, I'll pick up some dinner on the way home. Something you can eat with a straw, maybe. I paused at the door. Oh, and Matt? Next time you're exercising with my wife, you might want to read the warning labels first. Safety first, you know? I walked out of that hospital feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Jenna calling my name, but I didn't look back. I had a marriage to end and a life to rebuild, but first, I wanted to savor this moment. The moment when Eddie Morrison, small-town loser, had finally won a round. By Monday morning, the story had spread through Harlow like wildfire. In a town of 12,000 people, news travels fast, and embarrassing news travels at the speed of light. I couldn't walk into Dunkin' Donuts without hearing whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when people noticed me. At work, my colleagues treated me with a mixture of pity and barely concealed amusement. Jerry Kowalski, Mitch's cousin who worked in our shipping department, was the first to say something directly. Hey, Eddie, heard your wife had some kind of emergency over the weekend. Everything okay? She's fine, I said, not looking up from my inventory sheets. Just a little mishap at the gym. You know how dangerous exercise can be? Right, exercise. Jerry's grin was so wide I thought his face might split. Must have been some workout. The ribbing continued throughout the day. Coworkers made jokes about sticking together through tough times and asked if I needed any industrial-strength relationship advice. I played the part of the confused, concerned husband, shrugging off their comments with the weary dignity of a man whose wife had suffered an inexplicable accident. But the real test came that evening when I got home. Jenna was waiting for me in the living room, still moving gingerly from her ordeal. The doctors had successfully separated her from Matt after 6 hours of careful solvent application. But the experience had left both of them raw and humiliated. We need to talk, she said without preamble. I hung up my jacket and loosened my tie. Of course. How are you feeling? That must have been traumatic. Cut the shit, Eddie. I know what you did. I sat down in my recliner, the same chair where I'd watched countless football games and family movies over the years. What I did? Jenna? I was at work when you had your accident. It wasn't an accident. Someone sabotaged those toys. Someone who knew exactly where they were and how to get to them. Toys? I raised my eyebrows. What toys? I thought you were exercising. Her face flushed red. You know damn well what I'm talking about. Actually, I don't. See, I thought I knew my wife pretty well. I thought she was a yoga instructor who taught Pilates classes and went to book clubs. I had no idea she was into athletic equipment. Jenna stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. This is insane. You can't prove anything, and neither can I. But we both know what happened. What I know is that my wife of 15 years was found in a compromising position with another man, and now she's trying to blame me for her embarrassment. Embarrassment? Her voice cracked. Eddie, do you have any idea what this has done to my reputation, my career? I can't show my face at the gym. Half my yoga students have already canceled their sessions. Tanya is furious because it's affecting the whole business. I felt a warm glow of satisfaction in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. That's unfortunate. Maybe you should have thought about the consequences before you started exercising with Matt. We're getting divorced. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I'd been expecting them, but hearing them out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. 15 years of marriage over, just like that. If that's what you want, I said quietly. It's what I want. I'll be staying with Tanya until I can find my own place. My lawyer will be in touch. She turned to go upstairs, probably to pack, but I called after her. Jenna? She stopped, but didn't turn around. Was it worth it? Now she did turn, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. But it passed quickly, replaced by the cold determination that had become her default expression. Yes, she said. It was. After she left, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out how I felt. Sad, angry, relieved, all of the above. I'd won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Jenna would try to take half of everything in the divorce. She'd paint me as the vindictive husband who'd sabotaged her happiness. She'd probably even convince some people that I was the villain in this story. Maybe I was. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyer consultations and paperwork. Jenna hired Patricia Walsh, the most aggressive divorce attorney in the county. I went with Tom Bloom, an old-school lawyer who'd handled my father's estate years earlier. He was cheaper than Walsh and twice as sneaky, which suited me fine. Our first mediation session was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in November. I arrived at Walsh's office building, a gleaming glass tower in downtown Harlow that screamed expensive, wearing my best suit and my game face. Jenna was already there, sitting next to her lawyer in a conference room that probably cost more per hour than I made in a day. She'd lost weight since the hospital incident, and her face had a drawn, haggard look that makeup couldn't quite hide. Mr. Morrison, Patricia Walsh stood and offered her hand. She was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, perfectly groomed, with the kind of smile that could cut glass. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Me too, I said, shaking her hand firmly. I never wanted any of this. Tom Bloom arrived a few minutes later, carrying a battered briefcase and wearing a rumpled suit that had seen better days, but his eyes were sharp, and I knew he hadn't lost a case in over a decade. Sorry I'm late, he said, settling into his chair with a grunt. Traffic was murder. Now then, what are we talking about here? Walsh opened a leather portfolio and began reading from her notes. Mrs. Morrison is seeking an equitable division of marital assets, including the family home, joint savings accounts, and Mr. Morrison's pension benefits. She's also requesting alimony payments of $3,000 per month for a period of— Whoa there, Tom interrupted. $3,000 a month. What's she planning to do with that money? Buy a small country? My client has grown accustomed to a certain standard of living, Walsh replied coolly. And given Mr. Morrison's recent behavior, we believe substantial compensation is warranted. I leaned forward. Recent behavior? What recent behavior? Jenna spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. The sabotage, Eddie. The humiliation. The way you've destroyed my business and my reputation. I haven't destroyed anything. You did that all by yourself when you decided to cheat on me. We can't prove the affair, Walsh said quickly. And even if we could, adultery isn't grounds for punitive action in Massachusetts. No-fault divorce means she gets half of everything I've worked for, regardless of what she did to earn it, I finished. Yeah, I know how it works. Tom cleared his throat. Actually, there might be some complicating factors here. Eddie, you mentioned that Jenna has been running a business out of your home, using your internet connection, your address for tax purposes? I nodded. She's been teaching private yoga sessions and selling fitness programs online. All the income goes into her personal account. Interesting. And this business, it's been profitable? Very. She makes more from her online stuff than I do at the auto shop. Walsh's expression tightened. That's irrelevant. We're talking about marital assets, not— Actually, it's very relevant, Tom said, pulling out a thick folder. See, I did a little digging into Mrs. Morrison's business activities. Turns out she's been claiming the family home as her primary business address for tax purposes. That makes it a business asset, subject to different rules for division. The room fell silent. I could see Jenna and her lawyer exchanging worried glances. Furthermore, Tom continued, if Mrs. Morrison has been operating a profitable business during the marriage while claiming to be financially dependent on her husband, that affects the alimony calculation considerably. This is ridiculous, Jenna snapped. Eddie knew about my business. He encouraged it. Did I? I I remember you telling me it was just a hobby, pin money, nothing serious. You're lying. Am I? Tom, what did you find in those tax records? Tom smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Mrs. Morrison has been reporting income of over $60,000 annually from her fitness business. That's not pin money, that's a career. The mediation went downhill from there. By the time we left, 2 hours later, Jenna's demands had been cut in half, and her lawyer was talking about reassessing our strategy. I walked out of that building feeling like I'd won another round. But I should have known that Jenna wouldn't go down without a fight. The first sign that things were about to get worse came on a Saturday morning in December. I was at Murphy's Tavern, having a beer and watching college football with some guys I'd known since high school. It was our regular weekend tradition, nothing fancy, just old friends shooting the shit and pretending we weren't all getting older. But when I walked in that morning, the conversation stopped cold. "Hey, Eddie," said Dave Murphy, the owner's son and my former best man. "How's it going? Can't complain? You guys catch the game last night?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Pete Kowalski, another cousin of Mitch's and a guy I'd considered a close friend for 20 years, spoke up. "Eddie, we need to talk to you about something." I sat down at our usual table, but nobody else joined me. They all stayed standing, forming a loose semicircle around my chair like they were conducting an intervention. "Okay, what's on your minds?" Dave cleared his throat. "It's about Jenna and what happened at the hospital." "What about it? Come on, man, we all know you sabotaged those things. The whole town knows." I took a sip of my beer and kept my expression neutral. The whole town thinks they know a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. "Eddie." Pete sat down across from me, his face serious. "We've been friends for a long time. I was at your wedding. I'm godfather to your daughter. But what you did, it's not right." "What I did? Pete, my wife was cheating on me. She was humiliated because she got caught, not because of anything I did." "That's not how we see it," said Mike Sullivan, another longtime friend. "Yeah, Jenna made a mistake, but you went too far. You made her a laughingstock. You ruined her business. She ruined her own business when she decided to use it as a cover for her affair." "That's cold, Eddie. Even for you." I looked around at these men I'd known for decades. We'd been through divorces and job losses and family deaths together. We'd celebrated each other's kids' graduations and commiserated over our expanding waistlines. And now, they were all looking at me like I was a stranger. "So what are you saying? That I should have just smiled and pretended everything was fine while my wife screwed around behind my back?" "We're saying you should have handled it like an adult," Dave said. "Confronted her, gone to counseling, filed for divorce, not whatever the hell that was at the hospital." "And we're saying," Pete added, "that until you make this right with Jenna, you're not welcome here anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. These weren't just drinking buddies. They were my support system, my connection to the life I'd built in this town. And they were cutting me off. "Make it right? How exactly am I supposed to do that?" "Apologize," Mike said. "Publicly. Make it clear that what happened wasn't her fault." "But it was her fault. She's the one who made a mistake," Dave interrupted. "You're the one who turned it into a public humiliation. There's a difference." I finished my beer and stood up. "You know what? You're right. There is a difference. She betrayed 15 years of marriage, and I embarrassed her for a few hours. Clearly, I'm the real villain here." "Eddie, don't be like this," Pete said. "We're trying to help you." "No, you're trying to make yourselves feel better about abandoning a friend when he needs you most. But hey, at least you'll sleep well tonight knowing you stood up for the poor, innocent adulteress." I walked out of Murphy's and didn't look back, but I could feel their eyes on me until the door closed behind me. The ostracism spread quickly. By the following week, I was persona non grata at half the establishments in town. The guys at work still talked to me, but the conversations were stilted and professional. My neighbors nodded politely when they saw me, but didn't stop to chat like they used to. Even my daughter Amy, home from college for winter break, treated me like I had some kind of contagious disease. "Dad, what were you thinking?" she asked over dinner at a restaurant across town, the only place I could eat without running into people who now considered me a pariah. "I was thinking that your mother was cheating on me and lying to both of us about it." "So you humiliated her in front of the entire town? Made her into a joke?" Amy was 18, a freshman at UMass studying communications. She had Jenna's eyes and my stubborn streak, which made for some interesting conversations. "She humiliated herself, Amy. I just help the truth come out. The truth? Dad, everyone knows Mom was having an affair, but what you did was cruel. It was vindictive. It was... She struggled for the word. It was beneath you. Beneath me? Your mother spent months lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back, making me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong. But I'm the one who went too far. Yes! Amy slammed her hand on the table, causing other diners to look our way. Because you're supposed to be the adult here. You're supposed to be better than that. Better than what? Better than standing up for myself? Better than refusing to be a doormat? Better than revenge, Dad. Better than making Mom suffer just because you were hurt. I stared at my daughter, this young woman who used to think I hung the moon, and realized that I'd lost her too. Maybe not permanently, but for now, she saw me as the villain in this story. Your mother is staying with Tanya Rodriguez, right? Yeah. Why? Just curious. They seem to have gotten pretty close lately. Amy's expression softened slightly. Dad, I know you're hurting. I know this whole situation sucks, but you need to find a way to move on that doesn't involve hurting other people. What if other people deserve to be hurt? Nobody deserves what you did to Mom. I drove Amy back to her mother's temporary residence, a converted garage apartment behind Tanya's house that looked about as appealing as a prison cell. As she got out of the car, Amy turned back to me. I love you, Dad, but I can't support what you did, and until you can admit that you were wrong, I can't really be around you either. She closed the car door and walked away, leaving me alone in the darkness. That night, I sat in my empty house and took stock of my situation. My wife was gone. My friends had abandoned me. My daughter wanted nothing to do with me. I'd won the battle against Jenna and Matt, but I was losing the war for my life. Maybe it was time to change tactics, or maybe it was time to go nuclear. 3 months later, in March, I was a different man. Not better necessarily, but definitely different. The isolation had hardened me, burned away the parts of my personality that cared about being liked or accepted. I'd become something colder, more calculating. I'd also become very, very patient. During those long winter months, while Jenna lived in her garage apartment and our divorce crawled through the legal system, I'd been busy. Not with dating or drinking or any of the typical divorce guy cliches. I'd been investigating. It started with simple curiosity about Tanya Rodriguez, the gym owner who'd become Jenna's closest confidant. Something about their relationship bothered me. Not jealousy exactly, but a nagging sense that there was more to the story. I began hanging around Elite Fitness, not as a member, but as a casual observer. I'd park across the street during busy hours, watching the comings and goings. I'd strike up conversations with current and former employees at other businesses nearby. I'd even befriended the building's janitor, an older guy named Frank, who cleaned the offices after hours. What I discovered was fascinating. Tanya Rodriguez had a history. 3 previous gyms in 3 different states, all of them closed under mysterious circumstances involving financial irregularities. She'd been investigated twice by state athletic commissions for allegedly selling illegal supplements. And most interesting of all, she had a pattern of befriending married women, encouraging them to leave their husbands, and then somehow ending up with a financial stake in their divorce settlements. But the real bombshell came from Frank the janitor, who mentioned in passing that he'd seen Tanya and Matt Brennan having heated arguments in her office after hours. Arguments that sometimes ended with what sounded like furniture being moved around. Weird thing is, Frank told me over coffee at a diner downtown, sometimes I'd see that pretty trainer's car there all night. Real late. Made me wonder what kind of training goes on after midnight, you know? I knew. Armed with this information, I hired a private investigator, not some sleazy guy in a trench coat, but a former state police detective named Carol Zhang, who specialized in financial crimes. What she uncovered over the next 6 weeks was a masterpiece of manipulation and fraud. Tanya Rodriguez had been running a sophisticated scam for years. She'd identify unhappy wives with wealthy husbands, introduce them to attractive male trainers, usually Matt or one of his predecessors, encourage the affairs, and then help orchestrate divorces that left the women financially dependent on her support network. In return, she'd receive substantial loans or investments in her various business ventures, loans that were never repaid. She'd done it in Connecticut with a real estate agent's wife, in Rhode Island with a doctor's wife, in New Hampshire with a banker's wife, and now she was doing it in Massachusetts with my wife. The pattern was always the same. Befriend the wife, introduce the trainer, encourage the affair, support the divorce, collect the payoff. Jenna wasn't Tanya's victim. She was her latest mark, and I was the target. Carol's investigation also revealed that Matt Brennan wasn't just Tanya's employee, he was her nephew. The whole seduction had been planned from the beginning, designed to break up my marriage and leave Jenna vulnerable to Tanya's financial manipulations. But here's the beautiful part. They'd gotten greedy. Instead of waiting for the divorce to be finalized, Tanya had convinced Jenna to take out a substantial loan against her expected settlement, using the gym as collateral. The money had then been funneled into a series of shell companies that Tanya controlled. It was fraud, plain and simple. And I had enough evidence to prove it. The question was, what to do with this information? I could have gone to the police immediately. Could have turned over Carol's files and watched as Tanya and Matt were arrested for conspiracy and fraud. Could have seen justice served through proper legal channels. But that wouldn't have been nearly as satisfying as what I had planned. Instead, I waited. Waited for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity to reveal everything in the most devastating way possible. That opportunity came in April, at the annual Harlow Chamber of Commerce dinner, a fancy affair where local business owners gathered to pat themselves on the back and network over rubber chicken and cheap wine. Tanya Rodriguez was scheduled to receive an award for Outstanding New Business, and Jenna would be there as her guest. So would half the town, including all the former friends who'd abandoned me and the daughter who'd written me off as a vindictive monster. I bought a ticket and rented a tuxedo. If I was going to burn down my old life completely, I might as well dress for the occasion. The dinner was held at the Harlow Country Club, a stuffy establishment that had been the social center of our little town for over a century. I arrived fashionably late, after the cocktail hour, but before the main course, and took my assigned seat at a table near the back of the room. I could see Jenna at the head table, looking elegant in a black dress I'd never seen before. She'd gained back some of the weight she'd lost during our separation, and her face had recovered its color. She looked happy, or at least content. Tanya sat beside her, resplendent in a red gown that probably cost more than I made in a month. She was holding court, telling stories that made the other guests laugh and nod appreciatively. Matt was there too, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit. He kept glancing around the room nervously, and I wondered if he sensed what was coming. The dinner progressed through its usual stages: bland food, boring speeches, polite applause. Finally, Chamber President Robert Hayes took the podium to present the evening's awards. Our next honoree has brought innovation and excellence to Harlow's fitness community, Hayes began, reading from his prepared remarks. Elite Fitness has become a cornerstone of our downtown revitalization efforts, and its owner has shown remarkable dedication to helping local residents achieve their health and wellness goals. Please join me in recognizing Tanya Rodriguez as our Outstanding New Business Owner of the Year. The applause was enthusiastic. Tanya rose gracefully and made her way to the podium, accepting the Crystal Award with a brilliant smile. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "This honor means more to me than you can imagine. When I came to Harlow 2 years ago, I was looking for more than just a place to open a business. I was looking for a community, a place where I could put down roots and make a real difference in people's lives." More applause. I checked my watch. Almost time. "I want to thank all of my members and supporters," Tanya continued, "but especially my dear friend Jenna Morrison, who has been instrumental in Elite Fitness's success. Jenna, would you please stand?" Jenna rose, blushing slightly as the audience applauded. She looked genuinely moved by the recognition. "Jenna has shown incredible courage in rebuilding her life," Tanya said. "She's overcome personal challenges that would have defeated a lesser person, and she's done it with grace and dignity. She's an inspiration to us all." That was my cue. I stood up at my table in the back of the room and began clapping slowly, loudly. The sound echoed through the suddenly quiet ballroom as heads turned to see who was making the disturbance. "Absolutely inspiring," I called out, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "In fact, I think Jenna's story is so inspiring that everyone should hear the whole thing." "Eddie, sit down," someone hissed from a nearby table. But I was already walking toward the front of the room, pulling a manila envelope from my jacket pocket. See, what Tanya didn't mention is that Jenna's personal challenges were actually part of a carefully orchestrated business plan, a plan designed to defraud me and other unsuspecting husbands out of our life savings. Security guards were moving toward me now, but Robert Hayes held up a hand to stop them. The room was dead silent, everyone straining to hear what would happen next. I reached the podium and turned to face the crowd. 300 of Harlow's most prominent citizens stared back at me, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and anticipation. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, I'd like to tell you a story about friendship, betrayal, and the American dream. It's the story of how Tanya Rodriguez has been running a sophisticated con game, using attractive young men to seduce married women and then steal their divorce settlements. Tanya tried to grab the microphone, but I held it away from her. I have financial records, I continued, pulling documents from the envelope. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers, incorporation papers for shell companies, communication records between Tanya and her nephew Matt. Yes, nephew. Planning my wife's seduction from the very beginning. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I could see Jenna's face in the crowd, white with horror, as she began to understand what I was revealing. The adult toy incident at the hospital? That was just the opening act. The real crime has been happening right under our noses, as Tanya Rodriguez systematically identified vulnerable marriages, destroyed them, and then profited from the wreckage. Security was moving again, but I was almost finished. Jenna, honey, I called out, looking directly at my soon-to-be ex-wife. That loan you took out against your divorce settlement? The one Tanya convinced you to sign? Take a look at where that money actually went. I threw the papers into the air, letting them flutter down like confetti as the security guards finally reached me. The police already have copies of everything, I announced as they grabbed my arms, along with the FBI's white-collar crime division. I'd expect some very interesting visits over the next few days. As they dragged me toward the exit, I caught sight of Tanya Rodriguez's face. The confident smile was gone, replaced by the expression of a cornered animal. Matt had already disappeared, probably heading for the parking lot. And Jenna? Jenna was staring at the scattered papers on the floor, finally understanding that she hadn't been the predator in this story. She'd been the prey. The last thing I saw before they escorted me outside was Amy, my daughter, looking at me with something that might have been respect for the first time in months. 6 weeks later, Tanya Rodriguez and Matt Brennan were arrested on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. The investigation revealed that they'd stolen over $2 million from victims across 4 states. Jenna, as one of their targets rather than an accomplice, avoided criminal charges but lost everything she'd invested in their schemes. Our divorce was finalized quietly, with a much more equitable settlement than anyone had expected. Jenna moved back to her hometown in Vermont, where her sister helped her start over. Amy and I had dinner last week, our first real conversation since the chamber dinner. She told me that while she still didn't approve of my methods, she understood why I'd felt the need to expose the truth. You could have just told Mom privately, she said, warned her about Tanya without making it into a public spectacle. I could have, I agreed. But then, Tanya would have just moved on to the next town, the next victim. Sometimes you have to make a scene to make sure justice gets done. And was it worth it? Losing all your friends, becoming the town pariah? I thought about that for a long moment. Amy, those people weren't really my friends if they abandoned me for refusing to be a victim. And as for being a pariah, well, I'd rather be a pariah who tells the truth than a popular guy who keeps his mouth shut while criminals destroy people's lives. She smiled then, the first genuine smile she'd given me in over a year. You know what, Dad? I think I'm proud of you. Today I live alone in the house Jenna and I shared for 15 years. I've made new friends, people who value honesty over social harmony. I've got a new job at a better auto shop in the next town over, where nobody knows my history and nobody cares about my personal life as long as I do good work. And every morning when I wake up, I look in the mirror and see a man who refused to go quietly into the night when his world fell apart. A man who fought back, even when fighting back, made him the villain in everyone else's story. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe I should have taken the high road, turned the other cheek, forgiven and forgotten. But I sleep well at night, knowing that Tanya Rodriguez is in prison and Matt Brennan is working at a car wash in Ohio, and 3 other women in 3 other states got their money back because I refused to keep my mouth shut. Sometimes the hero doesn't get the girl or ride off into the sunset. Sometimes the hero just gets the satisfaction of knowing he did the right thing, even when doing the right thing made him look like the villain. And sometimes, that's enough.